Aging is inevitable, and I have found over recent years more fine lines, wrinkles, and a few extra pounds. But with both my husband and I tackling some pretty significant health challenges in recent years, I've wondered, how do you thrive as you age? I recently read a study that found that for the majority of the people studied, they were more productive in their 60s and 70s than any other decade of their life. So they must be doing something right to help them thrive as they age. Welcome back to another episode of Your Hope Filled Perspective, where it's always our goal to restore hope, renew minds, and empower listeners to live in their God given identity. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Bengtson, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us for this episode where today we're going to be talking about how to thrive as you age. My guest is Brigitte Cutshall. She's the founder of Gemini Media, host of Real Things Living podcast, a health advocate, and she focuses on delivering the best solutions to her clients. She's an accomplished business development professional in the communications, publishing, and print management industry. One of her goals is to inspire and to remind others to embrace life now by focusing on what's important to them. Everybody is dealing with something, and having the right perspective helps us deal with those challenges. Bridget's happened to be cancer and a rare brain tumor. So we're going to be talking to Brigitte today about how has she learned to thrive as she ages. Welcome to the program, Brigitte.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I think it's really cool. I love the word hope, by the way. I've always liked that word.
Doesn't that just fill you with some kind of anticipation or expectation for the future?
It just makes me smile, and it helps me not focus on the negative.
Yes,
That's what I
absolutely.
think a lot of people do. And I have the word hope in my family room above, I should say above the TV, but it lights up. I turn it on sometimes. It's something that I needed to get through when I was dealing with cancer. And it was just a reminder. And I looked up and I saw the word hope.
I may have to get a lit up hope sign for myself as an ambassador of hope.
Right.
Bridget, I know that so often our passion comes out of our own hurts and trials. So would you share a little bit about why you're so passionate about health advocacy?
I think because of a lot of us deal with unexpected health issues. And I'm one of those people, I always did the right thing, but things happen to us. And my doctors have called me a zebra among horses because of all these weird things that's happened to me. And the breast cancer happened twice, but in between, that's when that brain tumor, the rare tumor, was discovered. And they believe that's what actually caused because put pressure on my pituitary. I learned a lot about the body. Right. I didn't know it was there. It grew slowly. And so my body was accommodating to it, but I knew something wasn't right. So I kept asking. I asked a lot of questions. I joke that I'm a pain sometimes, but you can't there's not one solution for everybody. And the type of rare brain tumor I have, it is usually caused by like radiation exposure, as it's something happened. Think about the environment you grew up in as a child, and I was a military brat, and you're around these bases, and back then, I think at one point we lived in an apartment complex that had those power transfer stations behind, and those things emit a lot of radiation.
Yeah.
A lot of people people don't know that, but that happens later in life. But I'm just, blabbing here. The same year my tumor was discovered in my head, my older brother, they found a tumor under his armpit. But his was a fatty tumor, right? But it pushed on his heart. So isn't that just weird that we both have the same thing, different types of tumors, and where mine is located, it's very rare and it's hard to get to. It's deep. And I'm just so glad that we found it, and they weren't sure what to do because I ended up finding an expert like in Chicago at Northwestern Hospital, and he's the one that told me I'll be okay, because there's some, at the time, there's new technology. I call it technology. It was called cyber knife, where super targeted radiation to that particular spot. And if I had had surgery, there's so many risks.
Absolutely.
But I was at the age where I had to do something. It was medium size. It's not something we could just monitor. But I'm so glad I asked a lot of questions, and I always work with doctors that are open to that and open to research, and they like the attitude that I had, because I always told myself this is going to work out. I believed it somehow. And my mom, it's so my brother and I had this stuff, but my mother has never had anything because she was an adult. So that's what we learned, when you're exposed to radiation, you're more likely as a child to develop something later. And that's why the tumor that I have is just very rare, and it's not genetic. They have there's so many, I know they're trying so many. Mine's not genetic. It's an environment thing. And I'm just so glad I listened to my body.
And so do you still have symptoms as a result of that?
I'm a little bit, well, it took a while, to be honest with you. It was probably about, it's the first breast cancer was 2006, and then 2009 is when the brain tumor was discovered. So it took and the breast cancer came back because we couldn't kill that thing. It shrunk a little bit, but it continued to grow. And so we ended up doing, I don't have absolute data on it, but my doctor recommended a tetanus booster shot. They're using that to kill, for repurposing that for brain tumors. And that is what stopped my brain tumor from growing. Isn't that funny? It was
incredible.
Right. And that's kind of why I'm not been a big fan of getting vaccines, but I'm like, sure. And that's what killed it. And the symptom that I have is basically, now I have some hearing loss because it's on the left side, and the tumor is located between the hearing nerve, the facial nerve, and the vestibular nerve, which is your balance. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I knew when I was young, like, why am I out of balance sometimes, right? And so that's gotten better, but my hearing is a lot of hearing loss, partly because the cyber knife, it created some scar tissue. And if they ever had to do surgery on that, I think there's a new way they could do it through your sinus. I know it's not, there's just the thought of drilling in my head just freaked me out. But but if it was larger at the time, they would have had to do surgery, right? So mine was like medium size when they discovered it. So I was lucky. I should say lucky. It was a good thing that we found it at medium size rather than large.
Absolutely. So between the breast cancer twice and the brain tumor, how did you manage to thrive through diagnosis and treatment?
I focus on what's good in the situation rather than negative stuff. That always helped me. Some people, I think, have made fun of me, like tease me, like, oh, you're so positive. I'm like, and that's what gets me through it. Yes. Gets me through it. And I think my sons were a good motivator for me. I wanted to be there because they were young when this first happened. One was in elementary and one was in middle school. They're like 3 years apart when the breast cancer was found. And it was actually, there's more solutions to that. But for the breast cancer, what's weird about that, there's so many different types. People don't realize that. There's over 35 different types, and how they're trying to figure out, how did this happen to Bridget, right? And it ended up being, that's when they did tests on me. And like, your pituitary is what produces your hormones. And I had 2 hormones that are crazy out of whack. And that's when the breast cancer doctor that was monitoring me, he was a researcher, by the way. They're open to stuff. So he's the one that said, let's do an MRI of your brain to see my pituitary. He just wanted to see my pituitary. And there's a teeny tiny growth on the pituitary, but then it has big old tumor in the back. We didn't know. And so they believe it put pressure, and because it grew slow, that's why my body it wasn't like sudden fast growth, I was able to accommodate. And it's just so much. And I went and got certified in like nutrition to make sure I was eating the right stuff too. And because I became a little bit more sensitive to certain foods. I think part of that's age though. I think it's common as you age, you get more sensitive. And mine was just amplified, and it turned out I saw a specialist who does naturopathic stuff too. And he's the one that discovered I have a dairy sensitivity. And as I've aged, I've eaten more dairy. And the dairy in the US is different. I'm sure you've heard that in other countries.
Yeah.
We have too much hormones in our dairy here. It's just, it's affecting everybody. And that's why they're so surprised that someone like me who ate healthy, but I was eating cheese because they told you to eat cheese, right?
That's right.
And then I've always exercised, but then that's why I'm always about looking at options. I'm always looking at solutions. There always isn't one thing. And I'm so glad we found it. And again, every now and then I have a hard time walking outside in the dark because my right side of my brain is trying to over balance. So if I do walk outside in the dark, I go slow, right? It's only more outside than it is inside, because I would be more prone to fall because, and the doctors think it's kind of funny that I get pulled to the right, even the brain tumor's on the left, because and that can make you tired, by the way. Sometimes I can get tired if I walk in the dark too much. It's kind of weird. Even though I'm a runner.
Sense from the way your brain processes information as a neuropsychologist, you know, your brain is always looking for that horizon.
Yes.
You don't have that at night.
No, I don't. And then my body's like, and we go on I can't be on, we have a boat, we go out on a lot. I have a very hard time if it's really choppy.
Yep. Sure.
I can't balance, right? Because people who have vestibular, I'm sure you've heard of vestibular syndrome. I don't really have it. It's just I'm overdoing it. So I don't like being on the dock if it's real choppy. I have to get off because I don't want to fall. And that's really what it is. My body is just trying to protect me.
Yeah. So you have a really positive, optimistic outlook. And I know, treating thousands of patients, that makes such a difference. My husband does too. And doctors who told him that he would be dead 20 years ago, he's still living and here to prove them wrong. And I largely attribute that to his optimism and his positivity. So I'm curious, since we're talking today about how to thrive as you age, what helps motivate you every day?
That I'm still here. I wake up and I'm glad, not every day is sunshine, especially now with all this rain we're having in the Southeast. But I think that's what it is. And I get up and I walk. I have dogs. Now my kids are adults now. Dogs make me happy, right? I think being in nature makes me happy, and dogs help you be in the moment.
Yeah.
That's how I see dogs. Some people find dogs a pain, but I like them. And I think two of my dogs, they passed away a few years ago, but they helped me get through the cancer treatment, right? And maybe I needed that therapy that I didn't, if that makes sense. And then when I was, also was kind of funny, and when I ended up having a chemo in 2014, because when the breast cancer came back, it was aggressive. I had to do something. That was before we discovered the Tdap was going to kill that stupid brain tumor. But I noticed that people weren't eating healthy in there. They're like, people were donating cookies and Coke. I'm sorry, that's not. I know you're gonna be tired from chemo. I don't know if your husband had chemo. So I would try to be a good I always try to be a good role model. I would bring big bottles of water and apples, right? So that your body needs to heal with the proper nutrition. And that's something that I thought was important. And I've always craved vegetables for some reason. My mother called me the rabbit because that's what my body needed. And I think we shouldn't ignore that. Some people tell you to ignore your intuition. Like, I don't agree with that, especially with food. I've never been somebody to drink. I've never Maybe because my body is naturally more sensitive to that kind of stuff. Maybe because people don't realize there's histamine in alcohol.
Mhm.
I've never been someone to do that, and running, it helps me deal with it. I get the runner's high. It creates, I mean, that's what I call the runner's high. But I don't run as far as I used to because I am older. It's just something that makes me happy, and I'll do it, and I can still do it. And one of the best memories I had was before the last cancer. My sons knew running was important to their mother. So they ran a race with me 2 weeks before the surgery. And of course, they slowed down to stay with me because they're, I'm 30 years older than they are. But you just convey that and just show what makes you happy. And I do what makes me happy. And I don't do what doesn't make me happy. Like I can't drink wine because I will get a massive migraine. And it could be because of the brain tumor too.
I love that you focus on the things that bring you joy during the day, whether it's your dogs or it's going out in nature or it's running. I focus a lot on practicing gratitude for the simple joys that are in our life.
Yes.
Friends, we're going to take a real short commercial break, but stick around because when we come back, we're going to talk more about how to thrive as you age. We'll be right back. Welcome back to your Hope-Filled Perspective, where today we are talking to Brigitte Cutshall about how do you thrive as you age. And Brigitte explained before the break about how she's gone through treatment for breast cancer twice and a brain tumor. And if anything could cause you to go down the path of negativity, it could be health crises. But Brigitte, I'm wondering, what have you noticed in terms of what are some things that maybe improve or get better as we age? Because not everything is negative.
Correct. I think you have more time to, I think, focus on what you have. And I think people want stuff, but focus on I don't like shiny objects. How's that? That's something I always look at. I appreciate what I have, appreciate your family and friends. I think being around other people is helpful, and not to isolate yourself as you age. I get good energy from people. When the Zoom calls, thankful for that, right? During COVID.
Absolutely.
Because I'm a people person, and that was really, really helpful for me. I haven't traveled as much, but I think as you age, I think just try to use your puzzles, right? That's something I like to do. And I want to make sure my brain is being worked properly, because I've had the targeted radiation. So I do things like that. I like to cook. I have more time to cook, right? Because then I know what's in there. I think write a book, right? I think a lot, that's something that's helped too. You learn more about yourself. Write notes down, write it down for later, for your family, but they can learn more about you. Like my stepfather died unexpectedly a few years ago, and I wished I learned so much about him from his friends that he was in the military, right? But that you just connect more with other people. I mean, you don't have to share too much information, but I think you just learn so much about yourself and how to focus on what's important to you. And that to me is what I think is critical, and not to do what other people think you should do. Maybe I'm a stubborn streak. I have a little stubborn streak in me. That's part of it too.
But I suspect that little stubborn streak is what contributed to your long-term longevity, despite these very difficult diagnoses. You have to be a little tenacious and a little bit stubborn to buck, a prognosis that is at times scary, if not daunting.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. And I think surrounding yourself by the right people, that was just so helpful to me. My husband, thank God for my husband for being there for me. Think about how he had to keep it all tough, right? Mm-hmm. Think about that. And then support from my sister and, my whole family, and just the friends, and just to be I think being a good role model helps inspire other people to not be so negative. I think that's what it is.
Have you always been a positive person, or have there been things that you've learned along the way to help
Probably,
improve your positivity?
probably a little bit. I had if you think about, I can't even talk. Back when I was in high school, it was tough because, I mean, part of it, you're a hormonal teenage girl. But my parents got divorced, right? That was tough when you're six. And then I had to take care of my younger sister. So that, in a way, I didn't understand what was going on. And but I sucked it up a little, and I had to take care. I was worried about my sister. My brother had moved out already. He was a college student at that time. So that kind of, I learned from that experience of the divorce, experiencing that, being a divorced child. But that's really what it is. And then my mom got remarried about 18 months later. I was mad when I met her. But I learned from that because I was like, my mom, I don't need another military guy. And that's kind of how I was. But he was the best thing that ever happened to our, like, okay. But he took, when I graduated, it was just tough. The divorce was just tough on everybody. But my stepfather was really funny. When I graduated high school, he showed up, and it was just kind of funny. My mom was there between her husband's. I was embarrassed though, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't know any better. But that's what I learned from my mom. Just try to be empathetic to my mother. I don't know the details, but my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He probably had PTSD, you just don't know. And he got, after my mom left, he kind of was more verbally abusive, I think. But that's why I think he had PTSD. And that's why when I got out of high school, it's like, bye. I mean, but I had someplace to go though with my mom, moved in with my mom and her new husband. But I was thinking, oh, should I do this? But it was a great, positive. Now that I look at it, I wasn't positive at the moment, but I learned a lot from him and how generous he was and how he didn't judge people. I'm like, okay, he's right. Don't judge people based on their mistakes. And that's probably why he was at my high school graduation smiling, next to my mom's husband. So
I love those stories, how what feels so negative in the moment,
yes,
when we can look back, because right, hindsight's 2020, we can look back and see, oh my goodness, good things did come out of
right.
this.
He taught me to, right. I just had to, I did the right thing, helping my sister out, but then I had to stay there, right, and help her out because she's 8 years younger than me, but it worked out good, and she ended up moving up with us, North Carolina. But then he was in the military, but that's kind of why I was at the time mad at the military,
It's a hard
because
life.
it's very tough. People don't realize how traumatic. I mean, it's really normal for divorces to happen.
Sure.
But I'm like, I wanted it. In my perception, I'm perfect. That's kind of how I was a teenager, right? You wanted it to look perfect.
I think that's pretty typical of most teenagers.
Right. And so then oh my gosh, my mom got to, that's kind of what it was. And I was a really good student and athlete, but then when I graduated high school, I had to get out. Now I think back now on that, as we're talking, being in that city, I felt trauma. I don't know. I just had to leave, which was the right thing for me. And I've done well, and I go back and visit, and it's cool. Like, oh wow, I can remember, certain streets maybe, but back then I wasn't driving. I didn't really live there very long when I had a driver's license. So, but my stepfather, he bought me my first car. I had no money, right? It was a used old car, and then he taught me how to drive a stick shift. And then, okay, go get a part-time job so I can pay for gas. And then he helped me pay for my first year of college. It was just, at the time, I'm like, I mean, it was my being 18 is part of it. But I learned so much. You learn as you age. There's nothing to reflect on that. And that's another reason why I think I mentioned that journaling is you just learn about yourself. You don't have to share it publicly. It just helps you. And the biggest takeaway is to not judge people, because we all have something. going
And I
on.
think if we all spent less time worrying and judging other people,
Yes,
we would be more positive.
yes,
But the more you judge, the more you fall into that. And then the more you want to be around people who do that.
correct.
I don't like the drama. So I would just stay away from
Right.
it.
I think that's kind of what I felt because people are like making fun of me in high school about, oh, your mom and then you got divorced. And that's why I just kind of like, I think I held it inside. I never saw a counselor in high school about that because you don't realize how people don't realize I felt bullied. I think that's really what it was. And I'm like, okay, I'm graduated, bye, poo, and I left. Right. I mean, I had a place to go. I wasn't homeless. My mom and her husband took me in, accepted me in, and they realized they knew that, probably what I was dealing with. My mom's a psychologist, by the way, which is kind of funny. Now he convinced her, she's French, right? So he's the one that gave her confidence too.
Oh, I love it.
Right. And so she ended up getting her master's and then or maybe she got I don't remember, master's before they got married, but she ended up getting her PhD.
That's
And
awesome.
that's what she needed, that confidence. And we all needed that. And the marriage just wasn't working out, unfortunately.
Friends, we're going to take a real short commercial break, but you know how this program goes. When we come back, I'm going to ask Brigitte to share with you her hope-filled perspective for how do you thrive as you age. We'll be right back. Welcome back to your hope-filled perspective, where today we've been talking about how to thrive as you age. And it really sounds like through our conversation with Brigitte that so much of it comes back to your mindset, to your attitude, and to whether or not you're focusing on the negative things that are happening in your life or the positive things. Brigitte, I'd be really curious if our listeners are sitting here and they want to thrive while they age, but they're finding it's difficult. What hope-filled perspective would you want to leave them with today?
I'd highly recommend to appreciate what you currently have. I think people want too much. Trust me, I would like fancy stuff too, but I appreciate what I have. And that's, you take a step back and look at what you have. And then I think having that hope perspective, it just adds some positivity to the day, to the moment. I don't know who stated this quote, but my favorite quote is, the capacity for hope is the most significant fact of life. Have that capacity, and then it provides you with a sense of a destination where you need to go next, and then the energy to get started. That's kind of how it is. You've got to just do a little bit at a time. I think some people, they want to start new things, which is cool. Have a little plan if you want to do something different, and do baby steps, because then some people want to just go, hard charge. But try it out first. Do some baby steps, if that makes sense. And I find I've written a couple books, but it took me a long time to do it. But I wrote a book to make people happy. And I gave that book out to the cancer ward that I was at because I wanted to give them some hope.
I love that. Giving back to the people who helped you survive.
Yes, and that's really what it is. It's spreading the love and the hope and the positivity. It helps me feel better, and everybody else. They'll pick up on those vibes. Hopefully my dogs aren't barking.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the program today to share hope and your positive mindset, so that hopefully our listeners who have tuned in today will look at this aging process and realize that we really can thrive as we age. Friends, this has been another episode of your Hope-Filled Perspective. I will put all the information about Brigitte and all that she does on our show notes that you can find at drmichelleb.com. And would you consider sharing this episode with a friend who may be struggling to thrive as they're aging? Just might be the encouragement they need. Until next time, it's my hope and prayer for you that you have a hope-filled week.